Good afternoon. Yes? You've started. Good afternoon. Welcome to our Recruitment and Retention Rapid Improvement workshop. My name is Shadila Dejobi, head of HR. My team and I have been in the last 3 days working together with the quality improvement team on our processes, our current processes as they are at the moment. During that time as well, we have identified the blockages and the barriers. And in the last couple of days, we have also identified a couple of actions, come up with about 74 ideas and come up with a couple of actions that we've committed to deliver over the next 30 to 90 days. Some of them might take a bit longer depending on, some other infrastructure within the organization. So I am, as the head of HR, committed to this action plan, and I will be supporting my team in delivering the actions and engaging with execs and other senior managers within the organization to ensure that we're able to deliver this. Now I'll let the team introduce themselves and also tell us a bit about what you do. Thank you.
Okay, so as part of this event, we've looked at the various recruitment process and we've looked at it as a whole, and we know that obviously the current recruitment process that we've got causes frustration for recruiting managers, it causes frustrations within the team, and it can sometimes cause anxieties with applicants as well. So we've set out some clear goals and hope to improve the overall process, to ultimately make the process quicker, more streamlined, but also improve the applicant and manager experience. So we've discussed process procedures, we've discussed them together as a team with the help of Charlotte and Sade, and obviously with Krishna and Avni as well to give us some input. But we also utilised the feedback from recruiting managers, so some of the managers came from various areas of the business to offer their feedback and share their experiences. So we've used that information to try and improve it for them as well. We've also decided to give workforce colleagues individual roles, so we hope that by giving colleagues a specific area to focus on, it'll help improve relationships, increase confidence in the service, and also improve the reputation of workforce across the organisation, so that people have got that confidence to know that when they ask for something, we will provide that. We'll continue obviously to review the process and to measure the results, importantly, to make sure that what we've decided is working in the long run. And to achieve what we set out, we will need obviously the support from other colleagues, other teams, other departments to help provide some information that we need to make it work. Thank you. I'll hand over to Liz.
Okay, I'm Liz Clanton, I'm the HR project lead. I'll just talk a little bit about some of the issues we identified throughout the process. So we've gone through and identified quite a lot of areas where there are issues, and some of that is about duplication of information, and quite a lot of other ways around people being chased. So it's about people understanding and knowing the process. Some of my colleagues will talk a little bit more about that shortly, but I think one of the areas where we've identified some waste in the process, and that's because we're kind of dual input information. And actually what we've talked about is the NHS Jobs website that we use is probably just not utilised well enough. Actually we currently only use it to advertise the role for an applicant to apply through the website, and then we're sending interview invites out through that portal, but there's actually a lot more that system offers. And whilst we've not been able to kind of set out exactly what we will do going forward, because we don't have the knowledge at this stage in terms of exactly what we can get from that system, some of the actions we've committed to is around trying to, first of all, understand exactly what we're not utilising in that system and how we can use it better, and then we'll be able to identify exactly how we will use it going forward. But some of the specific areas we've identified to explore are standardising the shortlisting process by using the scoring mechanisms within the system. So currently managers don't actually kind of score at the shortlisting stage. So we're exploring that. We're also looking at reducing the duplication, because managers are currently setting out what the interview should be, sort of putting that on a Word document, an email, and then sending it to Workforce, and then Workforce enter it into NHS Jobs. we feel that actually it might well be as easy for a manager to be able to input that directly into the system, and the system then generate the interview invites as a result. So that will cut down on duplication. As well, currently we're using a tracker and an Excel spreadsheet to monitor all the checks as we go through the process. That requires obviously a job being set up on the tracker, the applicant being set up, recording all the kind of dates and everything else. And NHS Jobs has a sort of dashboard, so to actually manage the pre-employment checks, which hopefully, when we explore a bit further, would also allow us to communicate where we are in the process with the manager, because they as well as the offer letter process, because again we're currently doing that outside of the system. We know it can operate within the system, and also there's a messaging service within the system, so whether that kind of enables better communication between candidates, managers, etc. So they're all the things we've identified as needing to look at and identify and explore. Obviously, once the team have had some training on the system itself, we can understand better how that will do. The idea is we'll map out exactly how we're going to use that process, and then obviously we'd need to set out standard operating procedures. So actually each person using it, whether they're a manager or the workforce team, know exactly what they're doing when, and actually people can follow those easily. Obviously, in terms, because we're not able to tell you now exactly what we're doing with that, we'll be providing the updates at the 30, 60 and 90-day report outs.
Hello, my name's Charlotte Collinson, Talent Lead.
And I'm Charlotte, new to Workforce.
So good the name is twice. So we were lucky enough to be invited along today, and it's been really insightful because it's helped us to understand a little bit more of the process. We've talked about idea generation and the tools that we've used. So for example, we've used the imaginatively named A3 document, named purely because it is A3 size.
That's right, yeah.
So we've used that. That's helped us modify our thoughts so that we understand where we're going in the various different areas of that. We've also used our 6 thinking hats. Charlotte's going to model these for you. So our white hat, as an example, was to help us be very focused on facts so that we understood exactly what we were looking for and the end game on that. The yellow hat was to find lots of creative, different reasons and different ideas that we could move going forward. The black hat was finding as many possible flaws and things that could go wrong. And the green hat was also to make sure that we were creative, forward-thinking and able to look at various different options. The blue hat kept us in control so that we knew exactly what we were doing. And the red hat helped us so that we were able to understand the touchy-feely side of everything, so that we knew how people would feel and how they would express their thoughts from that. We also, from those various different tools, got 74 new ideas for which we tested throughout the day. We were able to put an action plan together for our 30, 60, 90, as Liz mentioned, and we worked on something which was a really basic idea, but we were asked to draw a triangle, asked to draw a square, and then asked to draw 2 squares within that. In the idea of Krishna, he wanted us to draw a house, but as you can see, that's an example of one of the things that we got because we didn't ask any questions, he didn't give explicit instructions, and we didn't ask anything from it. And we also used this, which is our 6 S's, which helps us organise our environment into a safe manner. We could sort out our ideas, set objectives and plans, make sure that everything was standardised and sustainable so that we could carry it on into the future. And then that's pretty much everything. But the key thing that we found from the tools was that communication was key. If we didn't ask enough questions or we weren't able to project what people might think or feel about those changes that we were making, it would be really difficult for us to get exactly what they were looking for.
Hi, I'm Dawn, and from this point on I'm going to be looking after the vacancy control and advertising as part of our discussions about each member of the workforce team having their own area. We've addressed, first of all, the vacancy control form, that it's cumbersome and clumsy. It doesn't always add the attachments that managers put on, and we've got to chase those up again, wasting time. So we're looking at that. It's also a bit ad hoc in terms of our approval, in that it takes a long time. It goes to our finance department, it goes to our directors, it goes back to the recruiting manager. So we're looking at getting a vacancy control panel together that'll just approve vacancies in one go. It won't go back to the recruiting manager, and it'll just come straight through to vacancy control for us to get on with it. Sade's looking into organising that. Also currently, the advertising structure that we have, we just get random adverts through that are all different, and we're trying to look at a uniform way of putting them onto NHS jobs or external adverts. And in doing that, because we don't sort of expect our managers to know how to write an advert, we're going to slowly but surely get together a library of adverts to put on ELSI, so that they can actually choose an advert and just tweak it as necessary without having to think the whole thing through. Again, I've mentioned about the dedicated workforce team, that we're all going to have our own areas, and hopefully this will improve the process enormously. And we also want to put on the vacancy control form the option that, particularly if it's a non-clinical role, to advertise externally outside of NHS jobs, where perhaps sometimes people might not look for, say, someone in finance. So we're looking at that as well, and we're getting a directory together of places that are good to advertise besides there. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jo, workforce assistant, and the key thing that was paramount to us as a whole, and the recruiting managers that visited over the last couple of days, has been that there's a lack of knowledge between recruiting managers, and they're not 100% sure what is expected of them throughout the process. So the main thing for me is that we need to get some recruitment training in place for existing managers and for people new to management within Locala, just so that it's a bit simpler for them to understand what is actually expected of them throughout the process and what workforce are wanting from them. So the aim is to get the training in place and to be able to deliver that, so that workforce are not having to chase things that are missing. If they know from the start, it will save a lot of time within workforce having to chase things all the time, because they should know what they're doing and what's expected of them when they've had that training. So the pre-employment currently takes the longest within the recruitment process, which is something that is unavoidable due to the delays with HEALS, the occupational health provider, and the DBS application process. That part of it is not something that we can improve, but we feel that having a dedicated workforce team colleague who is allocated to a certain role, so we will have 2 people that are dedicated to recruitment, which will be myself and Sally, and it will give a more personal touch to candidates and also to managers, because they'll know who's dealing with their vacancy and what's going on with it basically, so they'll know who to contact, and it'll be a more person-centred approach for them to be able to come to us for that. We've also looked at the KPIs for the pre-employment, and this will aim for a maximum of 48-hour turnaround for us to receive the interview decision form and to get the offer letter out. And also we've set a KPI for when we receive the new starter form to us completing the contract. That again will hopefully have a maximum of a 48-hour turnaround. So we're hoping to improve it in them ways to hopefully speed up the process in the long run. Thank you.
So we obviously recognise there's going to be some challenges along the way, and there's a lot that we need to pick up and do, and we need to work together to do that. And one of the challenges is going to be communication. So we're aware that we're going to have to make sure that we communicate clearly at every stage when we make any changes, whether that's using our workforce bulletin and using that email, Locala Live, various sources, Yammer. You know, we need to communicate as widely and as often as we possibly can. We've also said we need to keep a track also of the solutions, because rather than us just implementing something and running with it and never actually monitoring it and seeing if it's working, we need to make sure that that's put in place, and we will do that. And obviously we'll utilise the 30, 60, 90 day to be able to feed back and say where we're at each stage of that. Another challenge is going to be adapting to change. Obviously things change constantly within Locala, but we need to make sure that managers feel confident. So when the change happens with the recruitment process, we need to be able to offer support. And with having 2 dedicated workforce assistants for recruitment and 1 for vacancies, hopefully that'll help, so that when a vacancy comes in or when we receive a new application, the workforce colleague will introduce themselves as I will be looking after this process, so that they know that they've got that personal approach, rather than just ringing, you know, an unnamed phone number or email. They'll know who it is that they need to speak to get that advice and get that support. So hopefully that will help. And obviously trusting competencies, we need to make sure that everybody who is specialising in these roles is at the top of the game, and they really know what they're doing, and they've got the confidence to offer that advice and offer that support. So that's about training, you know, with me and the team, with Sade and me, and, you know, from outside of our team as well, and making sure that we all are competent in our roles as well. And then action planning, keep on top of it really, keep looking at what we can improve and not just staying stagnant and stale, and look at the next thing that we can do. If something's not working, how can we change it? But yeah, we're all going to need that dedicated time for training, whether that's on systems like NHS jobs or whether it is, you know, recruitment legislation or anything like that. We'll need to all make a point of having that time and dedicate that time to making sure that we all know what we're doing. Okay, thank you. Back to Jonathan.
All right. So over this last couple of days, there have been a number of lessons that we've learned from, you know, the workshop itself. One of the lessons learned is, you know, being able to improve efficiency by reducing waste through shared goals. I think that's quite important, because we, you know, during the workshop we realized that there's a lot of wastage, duplication, and I believe my colleagues have sort of touched on those points as well. And then we want to be able to, you know, for the organization as a whole to trust us as colleagues and, you know, build our credibility as well. Then we've talked about joint training, you know, building meetings is key positive move. Again, we going out and about trying to make sure that, you know, managers, stakeholders, anywhere whatsoever, shouting from the rooftop, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing to improve the recruitment team. And then can adapt to change and adapt to new ways of working. Louise has mentioned, you know, resistance to change. That normally happens when there's a change introduced, but it's just making sure that managers are aware of why those changes need to happen. And engaging with all colleagues. Again, I can't overemphasize that. If you don't carry people along with you when you're doing any sort of change or improvement, it's bound to fail. So we'll engage as much as possible. At every given point, when there's an opportunity for us to be out and about talking, we will be there. Even if it means, you know, going out, talking to managers about how we do recruitment, having sessions, you know, just to educate them, we will do that. Way forward, I think we're all committed in this room, and I'm sure you can all agree with me. Just say yay if you agree. That we will continue with conversations and use the recruitment improvement workshop action plan, which I believe we've all committed to. I'd like to use this opportunity as well to say a big thank you to the team. It's been fantastic, and then thank you to Charlotte as well, because I know you've given 3 days out of your very, very busy, you know, work schedule to share your ideas and suggestions. It's been good. And then thank you to Karishna and Avi for also helping us as well. And importantly as well, thank you Richard and Diane for coming here today. And I'm sure we're going to be working with yourselves to push some of the things that we require at the board level. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Well done, everyone.
Any questions?
Yes.
You I saw him scribbling. I tried to avoid that.
I thought otherwise I'll forget. So I think the first question, which is for everybody, is do you think it's been helpful? Have you actually learned something about it, about the processes that you're trying to do? And do you think what you've learned and what you're planning to do will make a difference?
Definitely.
Yeah, it will definitely make a difference, and I think it's worked because we've had this dedicated time. So, because we've all known for a while that there's things that need changing, but when you're busy at work and you're in your normal routine, it's hard to try and focus on that change. So this has given us that time to sort of be able to look in depth into what does actually need changing and what we can change.
Yeah, I can't believe it. 84 improvement ideas just came out actually this session. And how many action plans? 48? 48 action plans actually for 30, 90 and 120, 180 days. So
Okay.
it's brilliant. They have done really well.
Right. And one of the things, because there were a couple of points throughout the presentation where you identified things where around the vacancy form, and the question I'd got was, how much is that within your control? Because it may well need to be changed, but you can't necessarily do it yourself. So how much control can you put on that? How much change can you make given where we are?
So I'll obviously need to work with Sade to look at what needs to be on that form. Obviously we've got our own ideas because we know what gets utilised and what doesn't, and which bits are a bit of a waste of time at the moment. But if we develop a plan, whether it is a meeting where heads of ops or finance get together and agree that, then we won't need half the form. And speaking to Nicola and Matthew the other day regarding establishment control, if that is set up and worked properly, then again the form itself, you wouldn't need a lot of information on there. So I think other things do have to happen before we can make the form work. But if we work with the likes of IT or performance to make it work, then I think it can be a lot better than it is.
And I guess the other one, which is an external factor, heels, was brought up, at which point we all cringe. It's an external factor, and it's a key one in terms of the timescale, because everything else can go as smooth as anything, but then you're held up for how long?
Yeah.
So, have you got a plan, or is
Yes,
that one of
we
your
do.
plans?
So
for
one of the things that we intend to do, well, I'm actually taking that action forward, is to have a meeting with Hills in terms of what we want. Because I think there seems to be a bit of miscommunication in terms of the information they give to us. Some of them is not relevant to what we need it for. And therefore, having that meeting to understand what exactly the blockages are and why on earth not on earth, but why do they take that long to complete the pre-employment checks and do all the bits and all the, to just remove all the duplication as well. So that meeting is going to happen over the next couple of weeks with their contract manager to try and get to the bottom of it. So it's part of our action plan.
Okay, good. Bit of a pedantic one. So 48 hours response on turning around once the decision's made. So what about bank holidays then? I assume you mean 2 working days.
Okay, that's
2 working days.
Now that is pedantic.
Yeah.
I just couldn't help myself. I'm sorry. I thought that's a
We'll
really
be all the
amazing.
time.
That's a really amazing service.
We'll go to work today.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point.
So,
That's very good. Yeah.
Thank you.
and then the bit, because obviously it's an overview, so we haven't got all of the actions or some of it, but the panel idea for vacancy control.
So you
I think
write that
that's-
down.
I think it's good. It's a good idea. From my perspective, actually, why is it coming to a director anyway? Are we adding anything?
Yeah.
So happy with the panel. What wasn't covered, which is a question that I've got, is so who do you see doing it?
First of all, I see a representative from finance. Like I said, like you just
Good, that's a tick
identified.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't need, the director to be there. Then a representative from HR as well, and then someone from ops. That's what I see at this point in time, unless if you think we should be having somebody else on the panel. But we don't want to make it too cumbersome. Just something straight, simple, straight to the point. And And if there's a requirement for us to get clarity during the panel from whoever it is that has submitted the panel form, then we will do that.
Mhm.
And that'll be in line with the scheme of delegation and everything
Yeah.
like that, won't it?
Yeah.
So that'll
Yeah.
be really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the ones I'd have picked. Not saying it's right, but
Craig?
that's fine.
You
You've
done?
got, yeah.
So I like the pack of adverts, just things like that, because that'll improve the quality for the
There's such a mishmash,
candidate.
and we can't expect our recruiting managers to know how to write a good advert, really, because that's not their area. But we need to address it. Some of them are really bad.
Yeah, and then the training, who was it mentioned?
Yeah, training the recruitment.
So we've got our lead program, which
Yeah.
you described it, new managers as well as the existing. Just need to look at whether or not it's something that we could drop into that.
Yeah, we had that discussion
We had
actually.
that
We
Yeah,
had
so
the discussion.
that was that one, and then the other one around the communication. I literally yesterday I spoke with Emma Dickens around how can we develop a communication on workforce matters, because we've got bits and bobs, you know, like we've done the wellbeing, we've got a bit with a brand for that. So so she was really interested in doing something, because there is a lot coming out of workforce. You know, you sent a couple out yesterday, Liz. So you know, we will have perhaps a vehicle there, an opportunity to regularly put those updates in, and so on, so we can take people along with us. So I think that's another good one. What was the other one? I didn't write notes. Can't think what was the other one that I was going to mention. I should have done. It was the fact that you know, this process actually. I was looking at the slides that we're putting into the senior management group meeting next week. You know, and 25% of our calls, emails are recruitment related. And you know, in terms of a KPI and how can we show that this has made a difference, for me that is the most simple one. I think it'd be really good. And then just a general thank you everybody from me as well to give it me time to focus on this. I think it will be a real business improvement for us, so well done.
Certainly. One other thing which, I mean, just comes out of that, because obviously proof of the pudding is in what we get out at the end. I think using it, I was going to say ESR, but it's not, is it? It's NHS jobs, as much as we can, I think is really, really positive. There's a lot of tools in there, but what I assume, but you've not really covered because that's kind of in the detail, is that then our process maps to their step stages. So we're not then having to put things around NHS jobs except where it's absolutely necessary.
We are actually creating a standard operating procedures around how we are going to do that, the process, step 1, step 2, like that. So we know actually how we are moving on from each. Is that answers your question?
I think the detail of it as it comes through, and almost when we get to use it. So one of the issues, bearing in mind I've done a whole one recruitment while I'm here, it is you're using a whole load of different ways. So you've got the bit where you're writing stuff, just write something, and if it's the first time you've done it, you're doing it from scratch and send it in, so the adverts and things like that will really help. There is the bit about, well, then you're on to NHS jobs and then you're off NHS jobs, so whatever, and then you've got a whole load of paperwork.
Absolutely.
Do we need to have so it is just the thing that you're trying to get out of it, and if you give me the chance, I'm down into the detail, and that's probably not good, but then in terms of seeing that detail, the thing you're trying to achieve, which is that it's as smooth as possible. Absolutely. We're not swapping around between different modalities, we're not swapping into a system here and then somewhere else, because actually by the time you come back to using the system, you've forgotten your password, you've forgotten how to get onto it.
It's expired.
All of those things that are unfamiliarity and a lack of consistency almost throughout the process. So at the point that I next come to recruit somebody, I'll look forward to it being a really smooth process.
Fingers crossed.
When you've had your manager's training.
When I've had my manager's training.
Yeah, fair point.
You heard it here.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. You probably noticed here our actual lead time for the whole process, starting from the vacancy control till the first day at work, was 274 days, 100 hours and 30 minutes at the moment, actually current. And we are looking that one to maximum of 8 weeks, 3 days and 3.5 hours of lead time. So after all the 84 improvement ideas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows for advertising,
Yeah.
periods and
Yeah. Yeah.
But not notice period.
No,
Just
no.
Excluding.
Excluding that
Yeah.
notice period. We cannot, that's
Well,
not
that
in,
might be a bit-
not with our control.
Yes,
No,
exactly,
that is
yeah.
not.
Totally
And
out.
we didn't include that one here also. So it's a comparable.
Yeah.
So it's comparable.
Comparable.
Yeah.
Good.
Splendid.
Can I just take this opportunity while you're here? Because obviously we've looked at things that have an impact on what we do, and we've looked at, you know, some of the things are outside of our control. And one of the things that does sometimes cause a hold up is with new vacancies that are agreed. So a lot of the time they use the vacancy control form, but sometimes if a new vacancy is agreed, and I spoke with Nicola again about this the other day, is trying to, if it's agreed at board level, how that is fed down to the teams that need to know, because this causes managers so much frustration, because we say no, it's not been approved, and they say yes, it has been approved, it's been approved at board, but we don't know that, and then we go to finance to ask them, and they don't necessarily know what the budget is or which cost centre that'll come out of. So I don't know if there's anything that you can take back to agree that where that's fed to.
So is that the sort of things that when we're at
Do you know-
EMG
do you
and
know,
we
that's
go,
that's a very good, because I was going to ask you, tell us what you want us to do and
Okay.
who my single point of contact is, and then I'll send it to them. At the minute, I would say most of the time, because I cannot guarantee I do it every single time, when something is agreed, I send it to Simon and say, this is agreed. I've done my bit. If that's not the right place, if it's not getting communicated, then we need to pick it up
Yeah,
through.
and that's fine. I suppose it's would we still expect a manager to have to go through the vacancy control process?
Yes.
Right. So if that's the case, then finance would be the first point
So-
of approval. So that if they, as long as they know that that's
Yeah.
been approved, then that's fine.
So, top of my head, I notify Simon. Simon passes it on to whoever the management accountant is. He identifies where the money's coming from into reserves, and hopefully it's relatively clear where it's going to go in terms of our current cost centre structure. If it's not, it should be a conversation with the manager about what they want to do that's different. They should then know, so it should then cycle through. The manager's being told by finance, they then cycle through the vacancy process, which when it comes through to finance is really clear, because they already know about it, that it's being signed off. The bit that doesn't pick up is necessarily your bit if it requires a new position on ESR or whatever else.
Well,
So
the position,
there may
yeah.
be something there about saying, this is a new post, it's funded, it's all agreed, we know it's this grade, this cost centre. Do you just want to know at that point, or do you want to know at the point that we've signed it off?
Well, I think that if finance are aware, the manager needs to be aware of they need that position number to be able to fill in that vacancy control form. So that's where the
So,
delay is. So
if that's where the delay is, then, I mean, I can feed it back and ask Simon to sort it out, we can see just how they do it, but there's a two-pronged, isn't there? Manager's told it's agreed, they're told the funding's there, subject to them going through, because they don't get given it until they actually appoint it.
yeah.
Okay, so it's not you've got the post, there's the money, and we're away. It's you get the money when you appoint in. So it's not funded into their establishment until the point that they've recruited, but the management accountant should know, because otherwise they can't sign off the vacancy control form.
Yeah, and I suppose
So
then
at the point that they know, it needs to come both ways then to you to say,
and to performance
we
to
need a new
agree
position.
the position. Yeah, so it would be performance at the moment that create that position number. So it's
Yeah.
Matthew that would create that. So it's just the bit that holds everything, and nobody's sure at that stage who knows
Yeah.
what. So that would help, I think.
so sounds like we need something written down, because I think I've done my bit most of the
so
time.
does that need to go onto your action plan? I know Richard's just said then he'll speak with Simon, but just
I think from us it's just us knowing when it went through the vacancy control, because obviously we don't want to create more delays, but when a manager fills in that vacancy control form, that they've got all the information, so that if it's a new cost centre, for example, if it's a new position number, they'll need that there, but then the delay is they'll go and there's no position number.
Yeah.
And there's no, so, yeah.
I mean, I would say, because there is a bit of work that needs to be done on the vacancy control form going through, and there's also a bit which has come out of one of the audit reports about the establishment control process and whether or not we should be using budgets in ESR. And I'm thinking that there's something that needs to tie up across them, because if we start using budgets in ESR, the budgets are allocated by position. Now that creates a whole lot more of relationships between the financial position and what's actually on ESR, because then you can set ESR so you can't actually put somebody into a position if the budget isn't there.
And if there's no position.
And if so, but at the same time, if you know there's going to be a budget, you have to set it up on ESR in order to be able to go through, and therefore you should be asking for the position number if it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So I think there's a piece of work separate to this that needs to fit in on the establishment
Definitely.
route
That
that says, how do we triangulate this? Because otherwise, if we try and use the budgeting on ESR as a control measure, which is good in some ways, we're just going to create a stump, or what do you call it, a trip thing. Something that slows you down and you stumble over it every time. I can't think what it's called. That would be, yeah, it's one of those. So, and it will just block the process if you're not careful.